Hi, I'm Bookstrovert, and welcome to my podcast, The Author Interrogations. On this podcast, I talk all things books with prominent author interviewees. Today, I'm talking to Janet Sumner Johnson, author of the amazing middle grade book, The Winterton Deception Final Word, and countless other fantastic picture books. Hi, Janet. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Bookstrovert.
Of course. This is going to be so fun. So let's
So fun.
with our first question. What is your favorite middle grade book other than your own?
Oh, that is such a hard question because there are so many amazing books out there. Um, One really fun one I read recently, The Last Maker by Christine Soontornvat. I really love that one. I also really enjoyed the Egypt's Fire
Oh, yeah,
by Tom Phillips. You already interviewed him, I know, but
that was amazing.
his seriously, I love the madcap mystery, just all the fun things in his book, just super fun. So there's a couple, like doing
It's
good to hold back here too.
it's such a fun book. The twists and turns, just everything so good. What is your favorite book like in general? Is it still middle grade? Is it the same book?
Oh boy, okay. In general, if
I
I,
hard question.
it's a really hard question. If I go back to say my childhood, growing up, I was a huge fan of Anne of Green Gables. Um, I also really loved Robin McKinley, and she wrote a book called The Outlaws of Sherwood, and
Oh,
it's a retelling of Robin Hood. And I loved it. It was when I've read it, I don't even know how many times, just so many times. As I've gotten older, it's so hard to choose favorites. Let's see, and honestly, Christine Soontornvat is one of my very favorite authors, and I'm gonna blank on the name of her other book that she wrote. Um, it had light in the title, but that sounds terrible. That it's like on my shelf, so I'm looking for it. But it's terrible. I can't remember the title. That's why I'm like, ah. The Frame Up by Wendy McKnight McLeod. It's a mystery as well. Most of them are middle grade, like you said. I write middle grade for a reason. It's because I love reading it. And her that anyway, The Frame Up is an amazing story. I really love it. And yeah, I it's so hard to choose one because it totally depends on your mood, right?
yeah.
Sometimes you're in the mood for something more contemporary and maybe even more a little quiet and serious. And sometimes you just want funny, and sometimes you want silly, and sometimes you want a little romance. Um, like with the Outlaws of Sherwood, that has some romance. Not too much. I mean, like I said, I write middle grade for a reason, but
I love middle grade. I think it's such a fun like tool that you can use because you can do so many things that you can't. Like picture books, they're great, but they're for a younger audience, so you can't really like expand on deep topics. But then adult YA books, it's a little bit harder to really like put all the fun in. And middle grade is like just a fun balance of the two. Like it's just so much you can do and so much you can read. There's so much middle grade out there.
there is, and I agree. I middle grade, like I love picture books because I
Yeah.
write them as well, but they are very limited in scope. And so when you want to expand on a story, and the other thing about middle grade is that there's so much hope. Like kids are hopeful, and they're just encouraging. They want to know that they can handle what's going to come at them. And so those books, they always have hope, even when they're sad endings. It's sad, but with hope
Yeah.
for better things to come. So just middle grade is the place to be, in my humble opinion.
So getting into your book, Final Word, how did you come up with the idea for the Winterton Deception Final Word? Like, how did that come to be?
Well, I was reading one of my favorite books, The Westing Game. I think I was going through an old box of stuff and I came across my childhood copy of The Westing Game, which might have been my mom's that I stole, but that's a different story. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, oh, this book is so much fun. I love the puzzle mystery aspect. So I started checking out all of the puzzle mysteries I could find from the library, from the bookstore, because puzzle mysteries fascinated me. I love the aspect of being able to try and figure it out. And one thing I noticed though was that often as the reader, while the characters could figure it out, they had to have like insider information, and there wasn't really a way to solve the puzzles yourself. You had to wait for that key set of information that was going to suddenly land somehow, and that aha moment. I thought, I wonder if you could write a puzzle mystery that's solvable by the readers. If they wanted to pause and try and solve the clues for themselves, could they do it? So I kind of had that running through my head, and I thought, okay, what if I, did kind of a Westing game puzzle mystery that you could solve if you wanted to. And at the time, I was working on an adult spelling bee fundraiser, and I was in charge of finding all the words. So I was doing a lot of work searching up words and definitions and like hard words. I am, alas, not the speller I wish I were, not the speller that Hope is for sure. And I thought, I wonder if I could put those two concepts together. Like, what if we had a mystery somehow connected with a spelling bee? And so I just kind of brainstormed from there, but those two ideas kind of crashed together, and that's where it all started.
Yeah, I love that was one of the things like I truly loved about your book. I wrote it in the review. Like you could figure it out as you went. I so agree with like there wasn't like that little key piece of information you needed. You could really like be the detective. You could step into Hope's shoes and solve the mystery for yourself. And I just thought that was so cool. And your answer kind of leads into one of my other questions, but how'd you come up with the words for the spelling bee and well, multiple kind of little like tasks along the way where there's like the elimination round and all this stuff, and the words get harder and harder? Are they words that you had when you were finding the spelling bee for the adults, or are they entirely different, or what?
So the words came about both from the lists that I had already created. So I made a big long document for myself that I could take from. It was already kind of set, and it got from easier to harder. So I had kind of a direction with that. But those weren't necessarily always the words I wanted. So I ended up doing more research to find words that maybe fit, because sometimes the word that they got had some significance for the character and what they were going through. So I did some research sometimes. What's a word, a hard word that means something like this? And I couldn't always, get everything I wanted, but that was one way I researched. For the elimination rounds, those were really fun to create. I decided I didn't want just a regular old spelling bee. Like I knew that there was this time limit, and I think it was close to that time that there was the 7-way tie in the script spelling bee. I was like, I don't want that to happen. So, and I thought, if these people have been doing spelling bees their whole life, and this is the 25th annual spelling bee, then I need a way to eliminate them at some point when it's getting down to the wire and they're also good. So it was kind of fun to make that up and say, okay, what would be really hard? And I've always loved those memory games where they like put out a tray and they show it to you for 30 seconds, and then you have to write down like everything that's on it. I thought, what if I could do something with spelling with that? So I researched words that are deceptively hard to spell. Words like broccoli. That's I cannot spell broccoli for the life of me. 2 C's or 2 L's, 2 C's or 2 L's. I don't know. And there was quite a few lists out there. So like fuchsia was another one. I can't remember all of them. I mean, but a lot of them are used in that sequence, the words that are deceptively hard. You think you know how to spell it. It sounds simple, but it has some little trick that makes it hard, and you have to really know them. So
It'd be so tricky that way.
it can. So it was kind of really fun to dig into words as an author, a person who loves words anyway, to be able to dig deep and kind of see some of the tricky things out there. It was really fun. So I
Do you
loved that research.
do you have
A
a
favorite, oh, I don't usually have a favorite word. There are some fun words to say. like cappuccino.
That is a fun word.
It is. It just kind of flows off the tongue. Mnemonic. I don't know why that one. I like saying it, but mnemonic. Um, and just it's spelled so differently than you would guess that it's spelled, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not going to try and spell it because I'm sure I would spell it wrong. But look it up. It's
Okay.
spelled differently than you think. And
Listeners, look it up.
exactly. Um, so yeah, but I did actually buy the book by Tara Lazar that's all the fascinating words. She collects words and put it in this book that's so fun. And
Wow.
so I actually use that as a resource sometimes when I needed interesting words. Um, I should put it on my shelf over here. I should remember the title, but in the moment I'm not remembering it.
It's okay.
But
I like the word bubbly because it sounds exactly what it means, like bubbly. You're bubbly. It's just like the way that you want to say it is how the word is. Like it's so cohesive with itself.
yes, I do. I like that too. And a word sounds like it is. That's
Yeah.
always a fun word.
So our next question, one of my favorite things about Final Word were and are the characters. How did you flush out the characters? Did you know exactly in the beginning what characters you would have? Who would be your main character?
I fleshed them out. I did a lot of research and I actually created the characters very first. Once I knew I wanted to have a spelling bee and that I wanted it to be a puzzle mystery, the next thing I did was I just started with Jane Winterton because I knew I wanted this to be about a woman who'd made a lot of mistakes in her life, and this was her second chance to try and um, get some redemption in her life. And so I started with Jane Winterton and thought about what kids she would have. And I kind of did a free write on each of them. And I noted what age I wanted them to be in the book, their history, like their backstory, what happened with their mom to make them kind of have problems with her and not connect. And um, just really tried to flesh out like experiences that they'd had in their life, specific ones that um, would would have made them the way they were, like Fitzwilliam with how bitter he was and angry and expecting perfection from his kids and demanding it of himself as well. Um, so just a lot of free writes. And of course, characters change over time. There were characters I fleshed out that did not make the cut. I had to cut
Ooh,
them from the book. um, and they're like Hope and Gordon, they changed. I think initially they were two boys. I was like, you know what? That's no, I want a girl character.
that would have been a
So
completely different like vibe for the book.
totally different. It is amazing. One little change,
Yeah.
um, just the gender, and it's not the same person. It definitely changed the twins and their dynamic. And when I had written all the characters, I wasn't sure who I wanted to be the main character. Um, I debated on Jennifer. I did a lot of fleshing out with her if she was going to be the main one, and ultimately landed on the twins because I wanted an outside perspective into the Wintertons, and that's what they offered. But then, of course, like I said, I looked at them. Are they really who I need them to be? And as they were, they not quite. So I adjusted that and changed it to a girl and a boy. So, it's kind of an exploration as you figure out the story and what you want. And it really, really helped to have all of that backstory that I'd written for the characters. Sometimes it did mess me up though when I had to change the backstory and which one did I land on? I can't remember. But yeah. So I've got my Winterton Bible with all of that information. And yeah, characters were a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love plotting like everything that's going to happen and all the characters and how they interact with each other and their relationships with each other and why one character says this to another character but wouldn't say that to another character. It's so fun. It's like human researching everything. It's just so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that one of the most important things the author does is figures out relationships between people and how they work. And I'm a people watcher. I watch how people react with each other and how they act differently with different people. And, the most important thing to me is that I represent the diversity of experiences that there are out there as much as I can with my characters and how they react and making their actions authentic to them and to real people in the world so that they can identify with them. And I just think that character creation is one of the most important parts, especially as a middle grade author, because kids who read the book are going to be looking at my characters for how do they deal with problems, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And all of that is a chance for readers to learn for their own life how they can deal with hard things that they may face. So
For me
yeah,
with middle grade, I mean, like every kid is still figuring out who they are. I mean, I've been told even adults don't know
exactly.
who they are. And I think it's so nice to be able to see something in one of your favorite characters that you identify with, and you kind of get reassured that, okay, this is okay. This is a good part of me because it's a good part of this other character. And it's such a beautiful relationship between the reader and the book and the characters and how they interact and all of that.
Definitely. I love how you described all of that. And I think so many times we can feel alone in something that we are going through. Like, oh, I'm the only one who feels this way in school, and the only one who thinks I'm the worst and I can't do this. And when you realize that you're not, everyone is struggling with feelings like that at some point in their life. And I think books offer that insight when we aren't able to see it in real life. So
Yeah,
yeah, I love what you said.
that's the amazing thing about reading. There's so much connection and heart involved in it. It's amazing. Um, we're talking about characters. Is character development your favorite part of writing, or is another part of writing your favorite?
Boy, that is a really good question. I Character development is definitely right up there because it's such an exploration, and what you learn about them can shape the whole story or change the whole story. Um, I I struggle with plot. Plotting is where I really have to work because that's my um I would say my Achilles heel. But one part that it's funny. It's kind of like a love-hate relationship. That second draft, when you're going through and you're making sure that all of the pieces fit, that the story is cohesive. And it's so hard because you're like, oh, I already wrote this and there's so much to change. But at the same time, you see all of these hints that your brain gave you along the way in how to make it like, oh my gosh, I already have some of this stuff in there leading to where I needed to go. So I think that second draft is like my least favorite and most favorite, if that's
I
so
get what,
weird.
yeah. How and when did you realize you wanted to become a writer?
I was just talking about this with my husband. I am not one of those that wanted to be a writer when I was a kid. I planned to be an engineer,
Wow,
um,
that's a totally different career.
totally different career. Like math and science, I'm actually really good at those. And I always struggled in English and writing. And so I had plans. I went through college. Right as I got into college, I realized that even though I struggled most with the writing and the reading, I loved reading a lot. And so I ended up deciding to major in English, not planning to be a writer, though. I know that's so weird. I don't know what I was thinking I was going to do with it. I think I planned to go on and get a master's degree or something. But after I graduated, I had a chance to serve a religious mission. And on this mission, I ended up writing what we call firesides, basically their plays. And I got to write a bunch of plays and produce and direct them.
Wow.
And that opportunity was really what decided me. I really like this. I like telling stories and fleshing out characters and creating worlds where they didn't exist before. And so I was, in my early 20s when I figured out that I think this is what I want to do. I want to write stories. So I did a lot of things in the meantime. I did translation and I was a linguist, because obviously writing is a hard job and you need something to pay the bills while you're working to get published. But all that time, that was the goal, is to write a story that was good enough to get published. So
Can you talk a little bit about the process of getting your book published and how that happened?
sure. So, well, we kind of already talked about the beginning writing of it. And so I always go through several critique partners because they can see things I just can't see. And I wrote this story when I was super sick. I had COVID at the time when I wrote it. And so I wasn't sure how coherent it was going to be. So anyway, but I did my second draft because I always do at least 2 drafts before I share, because the first draft is not even readable. And sent it to my friend, and she was just so positive about it. So I made a bunch of changes. I had a second reader, made another bunch of changes, finally dared send it to my agent, who was super excited about it from the get-go. She's like, I love inheritance stories. Like, this is so exciting. And the funny thing is I didn't even tell her I was writing it because I just was writing it for myself. But once she had it, then we did another round of revision, and then she sent it out to a bunch of editors. And she's had told Allison about it, who was with Pixel and Ink at the time, and Allison Weiss. And funny story, we were not planning to send it to Allison. She was already my editor for my picture books, but I didn't write Final Word as a series. So with Pixel Link, it had to be a series, and it wasn't. So we were not planning to send it to her. And she convinced Lauren, she's like, anything can be a series, send it to me. I want to see it. So we sent it off to her without even a series proposal, because we were just sending it out wide. And within that first week, she emailed and said, hey, look, I can already tell I'm going to need that series information. Can you write some ideas and send it to us? So we hurried and worked on that together, sent it off, and sent out the series ideas. And in another week, she had sent an offer for the book. So I've never had something sell so fast within a couple weeks. And then so we had to hurry and tell everyone, hey, sorry, you'd quickly if you want a chance. And it was right over Christmas too. So it was kind of a whole wild, exciting Christmas for me, like best Christmas present ever, right?
Allison is my my favorite editor. I don't think I've ever had a favorite editor before, but without knowing it, I read all the books that well, almost, I can't read every single book she's edited, but all, most books, that middle grade books she had edited. And I didn't even know she had edited all of them. And I loved every single one. They quickly became one of my top 10 favorites. And then I found out she had edited them all. And I'm like, oh, that's why, because she's a part of each one. There's a little invisible string between them.
Yes. And I think what it also says is your taste in books aligns with hers too.
Yeah.
And she's an amazing editor. She was amazing to work with, gave so many great suggestions to really bring out the characters even better than I had done. In all of my character, just so much better, and clarified the plot points. She's just an amazing editor. So that was all kind of super fast and wild. And we signed I think by the end of January, we signed the contract, and it's just been lots of, there's the first revision with Allison and the second revision. I think we ended up doing 3 passes. Each one gets smaller as you go. The first one's the big stuff, and smaller and smaller changes as you go along. And then you start to look at copy editing. Is everything consistent throughout the book? Like if I said they had blue eyes before, did they still have blue eyes by the end of the book? Which is a really important role. You'd be surprised just how many little mistakes you can make. Like, this was happening on a Tuesday before, so why is it suddenly Friday? And then you go through there's proofreading, and then you get, in fact, I'm just at that stage for the next, oh, what did she call it? I'm still getting used to all the names of what they call things, but the interior check. So they do a combo check to make sure that with all the changes that you've made, everything's looking right on the pages and the images and whatnot. And then it goes to press. So you just kind of hold your breath and wait till the hard copy comes. And there's also a lot of work with the marketing and publicity team, and they've been amazing. They're now with the Holiday House and Pixel and Ink work together. So I've been able to do a lot of really fun things through them. Like my very favorite thing that they were able to make happen was the Scripps Spelling Bee chose Final Word as their book of the month in December of last year. So that was like just, whoa, dream come true. Like anything to do with Scripps Spelling Bee. I've admired them since I was little and wished I were a good enough speller to make it to one of their national spelling bees, but alas, not my fate.
Did you participate in spelling bees when you were little?
I did in elementary school, I think just through fifth grade. So we had third, fourth, and fifth grade spelling bees. And in third grade, I made it to ninth place. And in fourth grade, like I think it was first or second round, I misspelled accident with 3 C's. I was so nervous, alas. And I'd studied so hard, I just got nervous.
I've never participated in a spelling bee. I've had spelling tests. We had a lot of spelling tests in fourth grade, but never a spelling bee. That would have been fun.
Oh, and they are very fun, if not a little nerve-wracking.
This is a question that I am always interested in. I know that some authors get say in the cover of their book and some authors don't. Did you get say in the cover of your book?
I did. Allison was just amazing to work with. She spoke to me before we talked to any illustrators. She said, "Okay, I just want to make sure our concepts are along the same lines." I didn't get to tell them exactly what it should look like, but I showed her some of my very favorite puzzle mystery covers and what I kind of was hoping for. And luckily her image was in line with mine. And she's like, I know this artist that does houses and they've got this vibe. I'm like, I think I know who you're talking about. I've been following this person, if it's the same person. And it was. So we were able to, fortunately, Francisco Fonseca is the illustrator, and he was available and did the cover. And then he sent, I think we had 3 to choose from, and I got to say, this one's my favorite. And that's when they went with. So even though they had final say, they definitely asked me about it and listened to my input. So it was a lot of fun to see that come to life. Absolutely.
I know that you also write picture books. So this kind of coordinates to the cover thing, but when you're doing a picture book, do you get to help pick the person who does all the illustrations? Because for a cover, it's one picture. It's an amazing picture, but it's one picture. But a picture book, it's like everything, and it so influences how people are going to see the book and take the words in and all of that stuff.
You know, it kind of evolved through my picture book career. My first picture book, they just said, here's who we chose. And I mean, it turned out great. Courtney Dawson did Help Wanted, Must Love books. And I loved her art. It was really great. So I feel really fortunate that Capstone was that publisher. And with each subsequent, I've done 4 books with Capstone and then 2 with Pixel and Ink picture books. And with each subsequent picture book, I think because we had a relationship at that point, I got more input. I think the second time they said, this is who we're thinking. Are you okay with that? And showed me her art. And I said, yes. The third and fourth times they said, here are several people we're thinking of. Who do you like best of these several illustrators? And usually they would go with the one that I like best. and we'd have that discussion. And with Allison, I think she brought forth Stacy right from the beginning. She said, we're going to have a lot of kids in the Recess Genius. So Stacey Ebert has done a brilliant job she's got so many great characters, and her style would go well with the story. So I looked through her art and I agreed with Allison. So she's like, okay, we're going to try and get her, because she was pretty in demand at the time. So fortunately, it worked out, and Stacey's art goes really greatly with the Recess Genius. So I feel like one of the luckiest picture book authors ever, because the illustrators that have worked with the books and have done the characters have all been just amazing. I'm just so happy with all the art. So
Yeah, the pictures I've seen have looked gorgeous, and yeah.
yes, they're all amazing.
When you're writing a picture book, how is it different than writing middle grade?
So picture book, there's so few words that I'll have my outline of the story. Like, this is what I want to have happen. And my goal is to write it in as few words as possible. And not only that, every single word I'm going to go over so many times and change words. And I'll spend a lot of time just finding one specific word that will work. With a middle grade, it's more about the overall story.
Yeah.
And so I have to tell myself to not do what I'm used to doing with picture books. Like, don't stop at that word. It's okay for now. Just leave it. It's fine. Just keep going.
Oh,
Just keep writing. Just get the big picture story down on the paper. Because yeah, if I spent the time on each word like I do with picture books, I would never, ever finish a middle grade. But yeah, that's the biggest difference. It's you really have to look at the stories differently from that aspect, word focused versus overall story focus.
Well, we're wrapping up the interview, but I have one last question for you. Can you tell us anything about what's to come? Is there a Winterton Deception 2 in the works? Any picture books? Just anything.
Yeah, so Winterton Deception 2, which is called Fault Lines, comes out in October of this year. So I'm really excited.
I'm so
We're
excited.
Yes, we're just wrapping up all of the final um, editorial, making sure everything's right on the page before sending it to print, which is very soon. So it's more puzzle mystery, more family oriented clashes with, now Hope's got she's met all of these people. She knows she's a part of the Wintertons, and they know she's a part of the Wintertons, which is what, was not the case in the first book. And so just because you are part of something does not make it easy to be a family. So she's got to figure out how she fits into this family and what's her new world that she's facing. It's totally different than where she was in book one. And the other characters, I was really excited to get to bring Brenna more to the forefront in this book and explore her character. She is one of my favorite characters, just because I feel like there are so many times those kids who aren't good at school, aren't the shining stars with, like, people admire them without trying, kind of like Bella is. And but they're still really interesting people if you can get to know them. So it was really fun to kind of explore that with her and see her heart and what makes her shine, even though a lot of people miss that um, in her world. So anyway, I'm really excited for Fault Lines. Hopefully everyone's going to love it and get to know some of the other characters better and enjoy the puzzle mysteries. So
Not wait to read it. I saw the cover on Instagram. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It's just, I cannot wait to read the book.
it was so fun. Just a little Easter egg about the cover is I actually took the picture that the cover is based off of. So it's based off of a real place. And Francisco just did a brilliant job bringing that to life in the same world as the first cover, and yet different for a different story. So yeah, I love the cover. It just makes my heart happy every time I see it.
If number two has places that are based on real places, for lack of a better word, does number one have any places that are based on real places?
Well, yes and no. When I was planning, I knew I wanted to have it in Oregon on the coast. I lived in Oregon for a time, so I was kind of biased towards that area. I wanted it to be a fake town that they lived in because I needed it to be certain things. So I wanted to be able to make it what I needed. But I studied the map and found a place where it could exist. So I have a map that shows if this town existed, this is where it would be. And then I incorporated like other real towns that are nearby, where I put Winterton Chalet, where, I don't know that it could really be there, but because I think it's like forest land or something like that.
That's really
But yeah, so when I planned for these real places, I took that map and where it was, and I looked at what was nearby and what I wanted to use, which I also created some fake places in book two, because sometimes you just need a place to be something. And so it's easier to create it than find a place that's like that. But sometimes it's fun to use real places too, and people can say, I've been there, I recognize that. And so book two has a little bit of both of that, where you can say, I've been there and I know what this passage is talking about. And
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it
Well,
was
you
definitely different.
you so much. I just want to keep talking, but we're out of questions. So that's our final question. Thank you so much, Janet, for coming onto the podcast. It was so much fun talking to you. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. You can find all other Author Interrogations episodes on Spotify and YouTube. And you can find me on Instagram and Goodreads at Bookstrovert Reviews and Twitter at BookStrovertRev, which is spelled BOOKSTROVERT. Where can listeners find you, Janet?
I have my website, JanetSumnerJohnson.com. So you can find a lot of information about me there. And I'm also on Instagram at JanetSumnerJohnson.com. I am on X. Sometimes it's at Ms. Verbose. They didn't allow me to use enough characters to get my full name on there. Frustrating, right?
Like, I just had to put Rev instead of reviews.
Yeah, we do what we can. But yeah, Instagram is the best place where I post the most, and my website. So come find me, and you can learn all about my other books and more about me too.
Yeah, you should definitely visit Janet's Instagram. She has some fun, like little exciting challenges she posts and shout outs. It's a really fun place to go learn all about her books.
Thank you. And I enjoy your Instagram as well. I love reading about the books you've read and all the reviews that you post. So definitely follow Bookstrovert.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for listening. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.